Okay, here we are. Thank you for joining us today, where we're going to be talking about how to crush our sugar cravings. And I'm going to share with you three key strategies. So, as we're waiting for people to come on, I just want to say hello. This is Andy over here. He's helping me out. He's the technician, amongst many other things that he does, the creative director for Sweet Freedom, and a million other brilliant things that he does. So I'm so grateful he's here with us today, helping me out. And I'm so grateful that you're joining us. I know that addressing the sugar thing is never an easy thing to do, and it can be scary. It can be an annoyance. It can be a lot of things. But the fact that you've shown up means that there's something within you that knows this piece needs to be handled. And I want to congratulate you because, most people aren't willing to look at it. It can be so scary because it's so much a part of all of our lives that even just looking at it and addressing it is something that most people aren't willing to do. So I just want to give you a big pat on the back, to say thank you for looking out for yourself, stepping out to actually take care of this piece. Because what I do know is it's going to make a huge difference to every part of your life when you get this piece handled. And when I talk about getting it handled, it's not about it being perfect. It's about progress, not perfection, but just getting on what we call the Sweet Freedom train. So I am going to get started. I want to let you know that at the end of this webinar, I'm going to be answering questions. Any and all questions that you have, you can feel free to tap them into the chat, and I'll make sure that Andy relays them to me so I can answer them. And I'm going to get started by sharing my screen so you can actually see my presentation. Let's see. Here we go. Great. Okay. So we're going to get started with the webinar. And I'm going to just make sure this is big and present. Okay, so here we are. We are talking about the three keys to crushing your sugar cravings. So welcome. For those of you who are just joining us, we are Sweet Freedom. And I don't know if you've come to this webinar through one of our Instagram friends, C-Carve, or CK as we like to call her. If you've come through our private Facebook group or a friend of someone who's already on the Sweet Freedom train. Pardon me? Oh, okay. We're just waiting for isn't that funny? It was fine before and now it's changing on us. So I don't know what to do as far as making that any better. I'm just going to try this. So Andy's just telling me that the screen is gone black. So I'm just going to have to present like this. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a perfect screen. So you might be slightly distracted with things off to the side. I apologize for that. But yes. Speaking of progress and not perfection, we'll figure this out one day. But for now, let's get started talking about how you can actually start to curb your sugar cravings and crush them. So, man, this is my promise to you, okay? That we are going to actually get this piece handled for you. I'm going to show you how to curb your sugar cravings, and specifically three ways. So these are three things that you can do. And by the end of our time together, you're going to learn the three things that you should be doing that are really going to curb your sugar cravings. And what I also want to share with you is if you stay with me to the end, I will be doing a live Q&A. I've also got a special offer, and no matter whether you choose to take us up on that offer or join us on the Sweet Freedom train, I've got a beautiful bonus for you that will get you started. So whether you're ready to hop on the train with us or you just want to get started, wherever you are on your Sweet Freedom journey about handling the sugar piece, this bonus will get you started. So it's worth hanging around for. Okay, so what I'd like you to do right now is to get focused. And what we know is that you will be able to take in this information on a totally different level if you don't have a lot of distractions. So pop your phone to silent or airplane mode, unless of course you're watching this on your phone. That's not going to work. Maybe turn off some notifications. Pop your paperwork to the side, anything else you might be watching. I know we live in the ultimate time of mass distraction and multitasking, and you might be listening to parts of this webinar and brushing over certain parts and also trying to get a bunch of other things done. But I promise you, I'm going to get this information handled for you and into your hands and your arms, and into your mind and your heart, hopefully. but getting focused and present and eliminating other distractions are going to go a long way to you taking it up. Cool. Okay, so door shut, phone silent, present. Here we go. So if you just come new to this Sweet Freedom journey, I'm just going to quickly fill you in on how I actually am the person who is actually teaching you now, and why I actually feel that I'm a qualified teacher in this space. And really, I often like to say that I was born an addict. I don't like saying it, but it's a good way of framing that I've come to sugar addiction quite easily, in that as a baby, my mother was not only convinced by doctors and nurses to choose baby formula over breast milk, but she was actually intimidated and shamed into bottle feeding. That's how things were in the 60s. They thought they had improved the formula for feeding babies, and science had trumped what man has evolved and was created to feed its baby. And I started out with sugar addiction because baby formula in the 60s had refined sugars, oils, salts, grains, and chemicals, things that converted into sugar, things that disrupted the actual whole process of what a baby needs to actually be set up for life. And what that did was it ended up making me a very sick and moody child. And I was always having issues around sleeping, and I was hospitalized, almost died for diarrhea. Not exactly a flattering thing to share with you, but I really was a sugar addict from birth. And at my worst, I was actually eating, in later years of my life, I was a chef, and I felt I had, professional license to overeat. And I was deeply unhappy, and I was using sugar as a way of dealing with my unhappiness. And you can see this picture here of me on the left. I was actually twice the size of me in the picture on the right. And in between, I had this pathological attraction to horizontal stripes. But I was a size 16. And when you're 5'2", that kind of makes you round. And more than anything, I was actually really unhappy. I was experiencing all kinds of ailments that you could associate with being pre-diabetic, and migraine headaches, back aches, heartburn, all these issues that are really a result of eating what I call the lethal recipe. But the thing that was most debilitating for me was the actual depression that sugar created in my body. It created this oppressive, soul destroying, spirit destroying, body shaking depression. And all of that ended really when I got off of sugar. And you can see in this picture on the right that this is me present day. And although I was smiling on the pictures on the left, I was not a happy person. And what I want to share with you right now are the things that actually changed for me. So I did, as you can see, I went on to lose the weight, and I also moved on to be in positions of influence in food and nutrition. In Australia, I was there for 22 years. I was what you would consider a celebrity chef nutritionist, long before nutritionists and chefs had blended those skills. I was basically what you call a pioneer in the space. I was on the speaking circuit. I was on television. I did 7 television pilots in Australia. I spoke at conferences like TEDx Tokyo. That's over 10 years ago. I was featured in magazines, and I also wrote columns in glossy magazines. And I was speaking at universities, at cooking schools around the world. And I was considered, well, an expert. But here's the crazy thing, is I even went on to write this book called Return to Food, The Secrets of the Life-Changing Anti-Diet, where I talk about the lethal recipe and sugar being part of that, and how we refine sugar like it's a drug. But I still had this dirty secret. And that dirty secret was, even though I wasn't starting off breakfast in the morning with half a liter or a liter of ice cream, I was still eating sugar. So I wasn't freebasing it or snorting it like you see here with the donuts, but I was what I call just wanting it. And what I mean with just wanting it is that I was having just, one croissant at the farmer's market, just one glass of wine a week, just, having pizza once a week, just once having a lot of things that, sorry, just kind of eliminate my messages here. There we go. Okay. I was just having one of everything that was actually leading to a low level of sugar addiction. And, you know, I had a colleague of mine, a business mentor that I was doing videos for their company. And he said, you know, Sherry, I think you need to take on a cause. And he just said it out of the blue. I don't know where he plucked it from, but he said, you need to take on sugar. And I remember thinking in my head, oh my God, I'm like, I mean, I'm not flipping ready. There's no flipping way I'm ready to take on sugar. I was scared because I still, even though I wasn't full on addict, I still had this addiction to it. And I knew unchecked it would actually lead to problems, but I didn't want to address it. And it really wasn't until I almost lost my mom and she almost died from taking a fluoroquinine antibiotic because her body was already her immune system was super super low. And when she was in the hospital, I was devastated, obviously. But beyond that, what was really kind of shaking for me was that I could see that my mom and, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people in this hospital were impacted and were in the hospital in part, some large, some small, because of what they ate. And I knew that sugar played a big part in that. And I knew it was playing a part in my life. And it wasn't until I thought of losing her that I was ready to kind of look at it. It was a polarizing moment for me. And in particular, there was one instance where there was a woman who was admitted into the hospital because she had fallen during a diabetes induced stroke and broken her leg. So she had diabetes. She was managing her diabetes with insulin. She wasn't actually looking at the diet piece. And as a result, she had a stroke and broke her leg. Now, when she was in the hospital, she was not someone, if you saw her, you would identify, oh, she has a sugar problem. You'd look at my mom and think much more that my mom had the sugar problem because it expressed itself differently in the body. This woman was tall and slender. But the crazy thing and the thing that really tweaked this whole thing that I'm doing with Sweet Freedom is her family came in and brought her this tray of Tim Hortons donuts. So they brought her a whole tray of these donuts that were sitting on her bed for the duration of her stay, right? So they basically were feeding her the very thing that created her being in the hospital. And it's basically this lack of awareness around sugar and how damaging it is and how dangerous it is that's creating this massive problem in the world. And that's when I knew. I came home and I had to start basically doing Sweet Freedom. And literally on the drive home from Alberta to British Columbia to Vancouver, Sweet Freedom was born. And from that, we did a summit. We had 28 different experts that were sharing their level of expertise and their inspiration on how to actually beat sugar addiction. And there's lots of different pieces to it. And what came out of that summit was this program that we've created, which is the Sweet Freedom Live 8-week online coaching program that I'm going to tell you a little bit about at the end of this webinar, before we take questions. But first of all, I want to share with you why it's so important that we address the sugar piece. And I'm going to share with you this beautiful animation. On Sunday, we're actually releasing it to our whole audience, and we'll be launching it through Facebook. And Andy's created this amazing animation that explains the cravings behind the science behind our cravings for sugar and what's sugar actually doing in our body. But before we release it, I'm just going to mention a little bit about this, and that it begins in our gut. And in fact, most diseases that are called lifestyle diseases begin in our gut. In fact, I just saw the latest science that was showing Parkinson's disease begins in the gut, not the brain. So it's impacting the brain, and we're seeing this with many different diseases that are coming up for us. But the brain is definitely a big part of it. But it's what we eat and what's actually happening in the gut that then impacts the brain. And what we're seeing, and this blows most people away when they see this, because we think of sugar being kind of this innocent kind of substance. But cocaine being this terrible substance that's highly addictive. But we're seeing with brain scans that sugar lights up the brain's dopamine receptors 8 times more than cocaine. So cocaine is something that's easy to avoid day to day, but sugar is almost impossible to avoid. So although cocaine can, knock you for a loop and almost, kill you in one go, or potentially kill you in one go, sugar doesn't do that. You don't find people that just die in one day because of how much sugar they've had. It usually happens over a period of time. But here's the thing, it's so abundant. It's so everywhere. It's in everything that we're eating that it's hard to avoid, unlike cocaine. So it creates a bigger problem for us. And one of my former students I interviewed, who was a cocaine addict at one point in her life, her name's Shelley, she will actually tell you that it was way more difficult for her to give up sugar than it was for her to give up cocaine. She actually says that cocaine was much easier to give up than sugar because of that fact that it's in everything, it's everywhere, it's socially acceptable. And if we start to look at how sugar's made, it's made in very similar ways to cocaine. I realized this when I was first becoming a chef and studying to become a chef, and seeing that how we take poppy sap and use heat and chemicals to separate all the macro and micronutrients in it to create opium crystals makes it toxic and addictive to the body. But if we go even further and remove more of these phytochemicals and antioxidants and vitamins and minerals and fibers and the macronutrients in it, we turn it into a pure white substance, it becomes highly addictive and highly toxic to the body, particularly over sustained use. So what we're seeing that is fresh cane juice, if you have a glass of it in its natural state, it's satiating. You can hardly finish a whole glass of it. Your body just goes, whoa, I've had enough. But if you start to process it, like we process the opium sap or coca leaves and turn it into heroin or cocaine, when we do that to sugar, the actual brain signals that say stop eating shut off. And the reason is because we've removed all those macro and micronutrients, and we're ending up with this pure substance. The brain and the body saying, I'm not getting any of the tools that I need to protect the body and to take care of the body, so feed me more. So our body's shutting off to say, take it more in, is actually a protective mechanism that the body actually uses. But the problem is that what we tend to do is once we've had sugar, we will then take in more sugar rather than more of the stuff that actually nourishes us, because now we're addicted to the rush that we get from the actual sugar. And we're seeing this is actually happening on such a scale and such a level that we have over 146 diseases and conditions that are directly related to sugar consumption. And this list was compiled by Dr. Nancy Appleton. So she's a PhD, she's a doctor and a scientist, and she's showing us that there is scientific proof to show that these things are actually created and that it is the cause of many things, many diseases, like, we know heart disease, we know diabetes, we now know that Alzheimer's is connected to it. And this is really scary because the rates are increasing dramatically. It can take 20 to 30 years to actually manifest in the body and the brain. There are women as young as 24 who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Okay, so this is a really scary thing. And when we start to look at all the things that are actually connected to sugar consumption, I'm not just talking about disease, I'm talking about brain fog. I'm talking about your ability to sleep. Like I mentioned, depression, so things that aren't even considered, life-threatening diseases can actually diminish our quality of life significantly. And that by getting off of sugar, you can actually start to eliminate these things and start to feel alive, feel energized, feel empowered in your body. I think that's probably one of the things that I most associate with getting off of sugar, is feeling in control and in power of my body. And when I'm on sugar, if I'm in that place of addiction, I don't feel stronger than sugar. I feel like it has more power over me. And when you actually experience that feeling of when you're stronger than sugar and you get over it, it is amazing. So the benefits of actually getting off of sugar don't just impact your well-being, they impact your wallet. So we show you how just by giving up 2 sugary treats a day, which is not unusual for most people, you can save up to $4,000 a year. That not only can you actually start to reverse disease symptoms in as little as 7 days. I've had people who were on insulin who in as little as 7 days, they got off of sugar. All of their health symptoms started to reverse, and their dependence on insulin in many cases went away completely. So diabetes type 2 is completely reversible. This is proven, and getting off of sugar is instrumental in it. It's super important that you don't just use insulin to control your sugar levels. You need to work on the food piece. And of course, once you get off of sugar, the wonderful thing is that it starts to impact every single area of your life. We're talking about your relationships, mood swings, your spirit starts to soar. And as I teach, in Return to Food, addiction is your body telling you that you're not listening to your soul. So getting back to congratulating you, by being on this webinar, what I do know is there's a part of you that's actually listening to your soul. And I'm so grateful that you're here and that you've shown up for it. So I want to get into the 3 things that will help you curb your sugar cravings. And as I start to bring them up, one of the things that can actually interfere with our true learning is when we kind of go, I know that, I know that. I want you just to kind of open up your mind. And if you have any kind of blockages or any excuses, I want you to think of this quote by John Wooden. He's a world-renowned coach, and he says, "Do not allow what you cannot do to interfere with what you can do." So I just want you to, rather than just taking in what you want to take in, I want you to open up your mind and your heart and your soul and your gut right now to go, what is the information that Sherry's about to share with me right now that I need to learn? That what is the thing that if I actually listen to this and take action today, can literally change my life and in some cases save my life. So we're going to start with the first thing that you need to do in order to beat and crush your sugar cravings. This is really important. We kind of got, it's number 3 on the list, but it's super important. And this tactic is when you get nourished, when you're truly nourished, your cravings will end. Now, getting nourished is something that everyone's in a different place. And it doesn't matter where you are. If you just start to get nourished, this will actually start to make a big difference in whether you're craving sugar or not. Because remember when I went back to, if I go back to when I was talking about when the brain shuts off the mechanism to say, feed me more when it is nourished. Okay. We can override it because of emotional reasons, but for the most part, unless we actually have that piece handled, unless we're truly nourished, that no matter how you get the emotional piece handled, it's not going to work if your body's malnourished, because it's always going to want something that makes it feel good. And when you get nourished, you actually have this deep, resonant feeling of well-being, and you don't crave the sugar as much. But when you are malnourished, there's no way you can actually get that just thinking your way through it. You need to actually give the body what it needs to meet the tools that it's going to take to actually get your body healing from all those disease symptoms, okay, and conditions. So in order to do that, one of the best ways and the easiest ways you can do this is to go slow. Okay, so get something slow into your body with every single meal. So no matter whether you eat once or twice or 3 times a day, and everybody's different, we teach you how to listen to your body, so you actually start to feel within your body what it actually needs and when it needs it, rather than eating just because it's 12 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock, whatever your meal times are. So as you start to listen to your body and you put something slow in it, and so the acronym for SLOW is seasonal, local, organic, and whole. So if you get something that is living, right? Living foods in particular. So we're moving off of what I call the lethal recipe. And the lethal recipe is refined sugars, oils, salts, grains, chemicals. It is the thing that actually depletes the body from nutrients. So even if you are eating something seasonal, local, organic, and whole, if you're eating the lethal recipe, it can actually be stripping out the nutrients that you're getting from that. So how do you get to the place of seasonal, local, organic, and whole? Well, one of the super easy ways to do this is to get to a farmer's market, because it has all of that there. Now, if you're challenged to go to a farmer's market, and even if you do this once a month, it will be good for your soul and your body and the environment and the farmers. It's just a complete win-win. But if you're not able to get to a farmer's market, find a market around you, even if you have to drive. In some instances, depending on where I've lived at different times in the world, I've driven up to an hour to get to either a farmer's market or a market that sells whole foods and seasonal foods. And we really want to be supporting these markets because they do so much for not only our bodies, but the planet. So the idea to get something seasonal, local, organic, and whole into your body is important. And now we need to understand the hierarchy in which we're meant to be eating as the human species. And that is what I teach in Return to Food, where I talk about nature's principle, because nature tells us what to eat and the quantities to eat it and by how easily it's obtained in nature. So that which is most abundant in nature, we're meant to have most of. Harder to obtain in nature, we're meant to have less of it. But nature gives us stronger physiological desires, so we work harder for those foods in nature. Those harder to find foods in nature tend to be the things that have the highest amount of energy, and fats and things like that that can make us go for a long period of time. Now, in nature, it was great because those things were harder to find. We weren't overindulging in them because they were either seasonally available, like fruit, or much harder to gather, like the seeds and nuts. How many nuts would you eat in a day if you actually had to gather and peel all of them, crack them open yourself? So nature had this way of really tempering our consumption to what we needed. And in nature, we were usually just in slight deficit. It kept us hungry and willing to work more, and we weren't over fueling our bodies, which can create a load, and it can create imbalance in our body. So, how do we know what it is that we're meant to be eating in the hierarchy of nature? Well, nature has this way of looking at it. That which is most abundant, we require the most of. Harder to obtain, we require less of it. And if you cannot get it in nature, not only do we not need it, it's harmful to the body and the planet. And unfortunately, the lethal recipe is that which we cannot get in nature, and it's harmful to the body and the planet. Unfortunately, that's the very thing that sugar is, refined sugar in its unnatural state. And we're eating mostly from that range, and it's why we're getting sick. So we need to not only understand how we're meant to eat as the human species, and we teach this in our program. We show you how to actually understand what it is nature is telling us that we're meant to be eating, but we also show you how to eat as far as understanding the consumption concept. I gave a TED talk on this in Tokyo in 2009, and basically I show people how, if you had to source things in nature, you would be making very different decisions about what you're meant to be eating. So, a really simple example is if you were given a choice between an omelet or chicken for dinner, and say you're not a vegetarian, and you just go based on your cravings. Well, I've done this with literally thousands of people and audiences, and I've asked the question, and it's usually about 80 to 90% of the audience will choose chicken. And my theory is we choose that because it's more addictive. And the egg is the less popular choice because it's not as addictive. But if we give people the same choice in nature and they have to go and source an egg for their omelet, or catch, kill, pluck, disembowel, bleed, and prepare a chicken, most people become vegetarian. But even the hardcore carnivores will actually think twice about killing a chicken if they can have a source of eggs ongoing for months and months. One meal or two meals, depending on how you prepare that chicken or take care of it, versus an ongoing series of meals through the egg or the source of eggs. So when we start to think differently about our food, and we start to really appreciate, this concept of nature's principle, consumption concept, and slow eating, we understand a way of getting nourished that is not necessarily represented in a supermarket or by a nutritionist or dietitian or doctor or scientist. We now start to eat and think about food and eating food like the human species has evolved or was designed to actually eat. And this changes our relationship with food. And when we get nourished and we think differently about it, so we're not dependent on any kind of fad, we can actually start to curb our sugar cravings. So it's really important to understand this. Now, the second thing I want to share with you about crushing your sugar cravings, and it sounds so obvious that we don't often think about it this way, but by saying no to drugs, and remember, I talk about how we turn our foods into drugs. This is the lethal recipe. Just like poppy sap was turned into heroin, coca leaves are turned into cocaine. Fresh cane juice or beet juice, sugar beets, are actually turned into this pure white substance that is the very thing that creates our sugar cravings. So we have all different kinds of, strategies to help you to actually get away from refined sugar and the lethal recipe. Remember, I say it's refined sugars, oils, salts, grains, and chemicals. So all of those things that had colors and flavors and macro and micronutrients and phytochemicals in them in nature, once they're removed, they become addictive and toxic to our body, just like the cocaine and heroin. Okay, so what we're seeing now is that there's all kinds of foods with this in it. And when we have it, it creates an imbalance in the body. It creates this environment for disease in our body, and it creates the cravings. So getting off of those things can be really tricky and difficult. And so what we can share with you and we can show you is how you can actually gracefully transition from this lethal recipe and these drugs that create drug-like reactions and problems in the body to eating the seasonal local organic foods. And the great thing is that it can actually taste good. So I often say it's way more important what you don't eat than what you do eat. Because what you don't eat, not eating the lethal recipe or eating the lethal recipe, is the thing that actually creates the problems in the first place, the diseases, the addictive responses. And so even if we go back to a very pared down and simple way of eating, which is not so as difficult as a lot of people think, this will go a long way to curbing your sugar cravings. So we call this the replace principle. And we teach it in our 7-day challenge, our 21-day challenge, and in the 8-week live coaching program, that by basically going to the nature's principle consumption concept and just starting to transition from the lethal recipe. So say a version of Reese's peanut butter cups. A lot of people love those. We have a version that we call nut pucks. And basically, it's a natural version. You make it from home, you have them in the freezer. And instead of having one Reese's peanut butter cup, which just a few people have one, and that will, even if you can stop at one in the moment, people tend to either have the second one later in the day, and then it leads to more and more sugar consumption. When you have the nut pucks, it's amazing because they're nourishing and they're super delicious, but they also have tons of nutrients in it. One can actually be incredibly satisfying, and most people will record and say that they usually just have one or two and they're fine, right? So you don't have to give up sweet things to end sugar addiction. We think this is really important. There's a kind of a philosophy with a lot of people where they're thinking, well, it's all or nothing. And what they're showing is that there's really only 1 and at the most 5% of people who have an absolute zero tolerance relationship to sugar. And if you have that, this information will definitely help you. But for most of us, we actually can get our sugar relationship with sugar in our body and how we think about it in a place where we can actually have sweet things and they don't send us on these sugar binges. And we refer to that as freedom. Now, if you know me, I am a big believer in, I love chocolate. I believe it's God's way of saying he loves us and wants us to be happy, and that I'd much rather live to 100 with chocolate than 120 without chocolate. So for me, I love beautiful sweet things in life, and we show you how you can actually have these sweet things. Now, it might take a bit of time, and depending on where you are in your sweet freedom journey, where you are with sugar, it can actually take time to actually get to the place where you don't have a little bit of sugar and it triggers your long sugar addiction. But we can work with you to show you how to do this, and that it is entirely possible. And we have many examples of people within the Sweet Freedom program, wherever they are in the train, that give us testimonial to show that you can actually do this and they can do it. So there's wonderful things and wonderful ways that we can actually enjoy this sweetness in nature, where we don't actually feel like we're missing out, and that we actually feel like we're enjoying the whole human experience. I often say, I don't know if they're past lives or future lives, but if there is such a thing, I came to this one for the food. And for me, freedom and sweet freedom is to be able to enjoy my food. I am a food lover. I identify as a food lover. But, it's not just at one point in my life, where I was having food whenever and whatever I wanted, which was having those consequences that was creating disease symptoms in my body and this terrible depression. I am a true food lover that really believes that we can actually have the sweet things in life, providing we actually take care of the things that truly nourish us. And when I talk about the nourishment, it's not just about, sweet and food nourishment, because too much sweet things, even if they're natural, will lead to an imbalance in our body. So it's about finding that right balance for you. And part of that nourishment piece is to actually nourish ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, not just with the food that we're eating. So it kind of goes back to that first thing about getting nourished. We realize that nourishment isn't just about what we eat, but it's about, how we think and how we feel, and, things that make us feel alive and come alive, and that there's many ways to do it, where we start to look at these foods here that might be something that people think is super healthy. We start to actually think of them, as luxuries and beautiful things that really make us feel alive and make our brain come alive. So it's not just about getting food and nourishment in us. We really teach you there are non-food tools to nourish yourself that then make food not have such a big hold on us. And so we're big believers in that. We're having sugar. Our compulsions to have sugar come from deeper reasons than just the sugar. And when we start to work on those things and we start to nourish ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, the cravings will go away. And so there's lots of tools we give you. You can see here, this is just a small list, but this is part of the bigger picture work, that when you get this part handled in your life, it's amazing how sugar cravings and sugar just releases its hold that it has on you. So here's the number one kind of tactic that we know makes a big difference around our sugar cravings, and it's about the piece of connection, because the latest in research is showing us that the biggest cause of any addiction is disconnection. And we can see right now in our lives, and the way we're kind of living a life that's digitally connected, we're actually getting a sense of connection, but our true, deeper sense of connection is actually lacking. So the more time we spend on social media and on our digital devices, and the less time we actually spend connecting to one another, we actually feel a sense of discomfort because we're not truly connected. Truly connecting is a place, is the thing that actually keeps us together. And so whether that's with your family or your church group or your political association or your community organization, we need to get into community. And when it comes to sugar, if you have a community that actually supports you with the actual process that you're going through to get off of sugar, it makes a huge difference to not only just curbing your sugar cravings, but staying in a place where your cravings actually, aren't controlling you. There's a wonderful African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go farther, go together. And so we're big on getting into community. And we know that that feeling of connection binds us. There's a wonderful uh, thing that actually happens when we share a meal that changes our relationship to food. It changes our relationship to one another, and it feeds that part of our spirit and our mind and our heart and our body that needs connection. So there's a beautiful French proverb that says, where love sets the table, food tastes its best. And I can promise you, I truly, truly believe that how we eat as a species is as important as what we eat. And I'd much rather, have a greasy bowl of noodles with people who are kind, loving, and positive than to have the most gourmet, nutritiously prepared meal with people who are angry, depressed, and negative. But saying that, if we can actually take food that is slow, seasonal, local, organic, and whole, and you don't have to do a lot with it to make it taste good and to really enjoy it, and you share that with people who you love and care about and respect, and who love and care about and respect you, that it can literally be a game changer. And there's so many ways that we can connect with one another that change our relationship to food, that make our spirits feel nourished, that can literally crush our sugar cravings. So often we reach for sugar because we're feeling uncomfortable, because we're nervous, because we're anxious. And I believe a big part of that nervousness and anxiety that's actually created is because, one, we have this imbalance in our body because we're not truly nourished, but also because we're not nourished mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And when we start to remove toxicity in those areas and we start to nourish ourselves in those areas, and community is a really big and important part of this, that we get this incredible sense of well-being that really helps us on our journey for sweet freedom. And one of the people in Sweet Freedom that we often talk about is a beautiful woman by the name of Christina Hennig. She's one of our Sweet Freedom stars. And when she came to Sweet Freedom, she actually was had struggled with sugar her entire life. And like many of us, like myself, when I was in that period of time where I was having ice cream for breakfast and eating the chocolate chip cookies and the chocolate cake throughout the day and the Reese candies, I felt I was at sugar's mercy. And Christina definitely felt this as well. And she shared in a very personal and intimate interview that she had tried everything. And when she came to Sweet Freedom, she actually thought, if this doesn't work, that she actually considered ending her life. And I just, have such huge respect for Christina for sharing that story. The vulnerability piece around that is absolutely huge. But one of the things she knew was that research shows that community is a key factor for continued success. And she says, so I thought, even if I get nothing else, I'll get that. And she ended up getting so much more. And she basically went from feeling weaker than sugar to totally feeling stronger than sugar. And 18 months on, she has lost, you can see here in this picture, she lost over 60 pounds. And I met Christina. I had the privilege of actually getting to meet her in January when I was out in Toronto. We shared a cup of green tea together. And to see her transformation, she's just a wee little thing. So losing 60 pounds was a huge thing for her, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And she says that one of the things that actually changed for her and why it actually worked is that my belief, personally, my belief that you can do this is unshakable. And I totally know that you can do this if you're just given the right tools and strategies. She says, for probably the first time in my life, I know I'm stronger than sugar. And it feels like a miracle. She said, I'm so grateful to have found this program and can't recommend it enough. And I'll just report that 18 months after she had lost the 60 pounds, she went through another really difficult time in her life where she was, struggling. And one of the things that came out of it, which was just amazing, is she said going through this period of time was amazing for her because she never, ever felt at any point that sugar was the answer for her. She didn't go back to sugar. And now she has a sense of love for her body that is absolutely amazing. So, and we're big believers at Sweet Freedom that love is the most significant vitamin we can give our body. It's the world's most powerful nutrient because it nourishes our entire being. So it's a big part of what we do and why we do it. So we also believe that it's really important to understand that you don't have to be ready to give up sugar. That there's so many things in our lives that can come up as excuses to not even get started. But we believe getting started is better than standing still, or worse, um, you know, getting onto the train to Sugar City. We believe that Sweet Freedom, you don't have to be ready to get started, but in getting started, you'll get ready. So, and Stephen Pressfield brings this home in his writing. He's an amazing novelist and screenplay writer. He wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance and a whole series of books on resistance, starting with The War of Art. But his big belief is begin before you're ready. And we can't stress this enough, how important it is just to get started. And we have resources for you and wherever you are in your Sweet Freedom journey to help you get there. So what I want to share right now is how we actually work with you. So if you're interested in cutting your sugar cravings, which is what this is all about, so getting nourished, getting off the lethal recipe, and upgrading your food choices so that you can actually have the sweet things in life, but not the things that are actually going to trigger your sugar binging, and to get into community, that this is going to go so far to ending sugar's grip on you. So you're going to cut your cravings. You're going to end up sleeping better. You're going to look and feel better. Your immunity to disease is going to increase. So you're not going to have colds like you used to have, or those niggling aches and pains that are really often signs of inflammation. Your body's trying to tell you to get off the lethal recipe. And when you do that, you're going to have tons of energy. You're going to start to remember things more clearly, think more clearly. The mood swings, I believe that a lot of road rage and just these huge kind of angry feelings are coming up because our bodies are toxic. The liver is overpowered and overstressed. And anger's emotion is definitely happening because our livers are toxic. And as we start to cleanse our body and get off of sugar and the other things that, create these huge burdens on our organs, our moods start to even out. And we start to feel this natural happiness that comes from living in a body that is nourished. And there's a lot of damage that sugar does to your body. And by getting off of it and getting nourished and being supported to actually do this, you're going to go a long way to heal sugar erosion so that you're not vulnerable to the genetic predisposition you have to certain diseases, which we all have based on our genetics and history. So I want to share with you what we have to help you through this process, because most people, if you're like me and like many people who came to the Sweet Freedom Online program, our live coaching program, there's this little voice in them that feels, I should be able to do this on my own. But the truth is that the way we're built as a human species, in first our natural susceptibility to sugar addiction, our natural inclination to want to be in community, and that we're meant to eat together and we're meant to be in tribes, means that doing it alone is not actually a long-term strategy. You can go fast, and what you'll find is that some people will end their sugar addiction for a day, a week, or a month, or even 6 months. I've had people say, I did it for a whole year and then I stopped. And so the resources that we have are designed to address each and every um, uh, roadblock that will stop you from not only getting off sugar, but staying off sugar. And that's why when we offer any of the resources that we have, and particularly our live coaching program, we give you lifetime access to this, because we know that sugar addiction, you can go a long way to stopping it in 7 days. Even in 21 days, you can actually have an amazing experience of being sugar-free for 21 days, which most people can't remember the last time they were 21 days sugar-free. So just by showing up and even considering this, you're doing something that most people aren't willing to do. But the tools are really designed to keep you in a place where you always have access to these things. So if you get off the Sweet Freedom train, you can hop right back on. And so we have this beautiful 21-day sugar-free challenge ebook that has 50 recipes. It has weekly meal plans and even shopping lists. And it will actually also help you identify where your level of sugar addiction is and what the best meal plan and program is for you, as well as tips and strategies to manage those sugar cravings beyond what I've shared here today. And we also have the free bonus of the 7-day Eat Less Sugar Challenge, which we used to sell online for $37, but we're throwing it in with the 21-day challenge ebook. And it's a beautiful book that I'm so proud of the Sweet Freedom team for actually creating. It's a beautiful resource with these amazing recipes that are truly delicious. I'm not just talking about, kind of they look good in pictures, but they actually really do taste good. And we show you where you are on the spectrum of sugar addiction and where you can actually enter. That's going to give you most bang for your return on investment for time and resources. And as I mentioned, there's the meal plans and shopping lists that you can see that are super easy to kind of put together. And we teach you the deeper meaning pieces, the tools and tips to help you manage your sugar addiction, particularly through those tough moments when you're feeling triggered. And the 7-day Eat Less Sugar Challenge, this is where we get you to start right away, because no matter whether you're ready to give up sugar or you have a serious problem, this is one of the first steps that we actually have you do, where you're going to learn here to not just eat less sugar, but to increase the quality of the types of sugars that you're having, so they have less of a triggering effect for binging and addiction. And we also are starting to teach you here how to nourish yourself, so that when you do finally go to do a 21-day challenge or even a 30-day complete sugar-free challenge that we have you do in the 8-week online program, but we don't get you to do that for 4 weeks. We get you ready to do that. That what you're going to find is that as the more you nourish yourself, the more you get used to nourishing yourself in the right way, that the less of a hold sugar has on you. So with the 8-week online program, the live coaching program, we give you this 7-day challenge. We also give you the Return to Food 7-day challenge. And this is where you get the philosophy piece. These are the philosophies that when I started to teach people about sweet freedom, This made a huge difference because it made them understand how we're meant to eat as the human species. So you learn about nature's principle, the consumption concept, replace principle, and the lethal recipe in more depth, and you get more understanding of how we're meant to eat as this human species. So you're not a victim of the latest food trend, the keto, uh, paleo, vegan, carb free, all these kinds of things that actually can have you tossing back and forth. You start to understand how you're meant to eat. So you're not dependent on me or anyone else to know. You actually know it. And as you start to eat this way and feel that way, you get a cellular level understanding of what actually works for your body. And that 7-day challenge has custom meditations and relaxation audios. There's recipes in there, and there's videos and PDFs for every day. So that's our second 7-day challenge that you get bonus when you join our 8-week online program. And you also get a 30-day mentoring video coaching program. So as you go into the live coaching program and you're 4 weeks into that, and we get you to do a 30-day challenge being sugar-free, so you can actually sense in your body what it actually feels like to be sugar sober, okay? Have this sobriety from sugar. Every day there's a video that is just perfectly designed for that day, for what naturally comes up for you over a period of 30 days of giving up sugar, that really helps and supports you there. We've also got every week within our 8-week online live program, there's a Zoom session where we all come together as a community. Now, we have the private Facebook group I'll mention, but this live coaching session is super important. If you were to hire me for a coaching session, it's $300 for an hour. Now, you can't make dramatic changes in 1 hour. And I never sell a one-on-one session. I always sell it in a package, because you need exposure to this work over a period of time. It's like no one's going to solve their marital problems with one, therapist session. It takes time to heal our relationship with food. But in the 8-week live coaching program, you get exposure to me for 8 live sessions where we're all together on Zoom. So I actually go over the lessons for that week and take questions from last week, and also questions of what's going on. I do hot seats with people, and we get very strategic and very personal about our relationship with sugar and getting to that point of sweet freedom. So you can imagine eight sessions with me, $2,400. You're getting that as a bonus for this actual program, which I personally think is, one of the best value things about the program. We also give you some some lifestyle guides. Now, these are things, ebooks that you can go into. You get a toolbox, you get a shopping guide. Okay, I'm going to go out shopping. I'm going to do sweet freedom shopping. How do I do this? What do I look out for? What do I look out to avoid? And if you're eating out, a lot of people, they're saying like almost 1 in 2 meals now are eaten outside of the home. If you're someone who eats out and you don't cook yet, we're going to show you how to navigate eating out and how to actually set up your kitchen. We've got a kitchen audit guide that shows you how to actually get into your kitchen and set it up so it is sweet freedom friendly. And a secret sugar guide. Do you know there are literally dozens of names of sugar that are put into ingredient lists that most people don't realize are in there, and that they're actually eating sugar, and how much of sugar can actually be hidden in certain things that you may never guess that it's in. So we've got a guide that helps you go through that, so you know exactly what you're getting. And most people who actually have sugar addiction have some level of candida overgrowth. So we have a candida guide that's going to help you with some tips, tools, strategies, and even some supplements that are going to help get your candida under control. Because if you have a candida overgrowth, that's going to lead to more sugar cravings and going to make the process a lot harder to give up. And as I mentioned before, we have a private Facebook group. This is where you get to share your experiences, and you get to be part of this wonderful community that we created. We're creating a movement. We want to get 1 million people to end sugar addiction, and then for those people to influence their friends to end sugar addiction, so that everyone has a taste of sweet freedom. And in that group, this wonderful community, it's incredibly supportive. We keep each other accountable there. You can actually receive and provide support, because it's not just receiving support that makes you strong. Giving it to others and encouraging others is actually something that feeds your soul in a way that just getting help doesn't. And you might be thinking, I'm not in a position to help anyone. You would be amazed at how people like Christina have stepped up to be incredibly supportive of other people, and they see her as a star and inspiration. And there was a time that if you told her that, she would not believe yeah, how amazing she is, and what inspiration she gives to other people. We also release information and, videos, and I do some private shares in there, and I'll do pop-up, live sessions with the group that just add value all the time. Now, another bonus that we have is the Sweet Freedom Summit that we did when we first started Sweet Freedom. We had 28 different experts share their expertise and their story and their tips to actually help end sugar addiction. I've taken my 8 favorites, the ones that people most watched and had the most value, and we're including that in the 8-week live coaching program. So if you start to look at all these things that we're offering with the program, and if you were to work with me alone to actually do this over a period of 8 weeks, I would charge more than $10,000. In fact, I've done lifestyle makeovers with families where I've just gone into their home for a week, and I've basically given them this information. And I will charge over $10,000 to do this for many reasons. But I realize for most people that's completely unsustainable. So when we first started doing this program, I thought what was reasonable for an 8-week live program, if you're thinking about just even a coaching session with me a week and all the other tools that I've talked about that we're including, I really feel that $997 is excellent value. And I also know that it's a barrier for people to actually start, even though I know you're going to get great value from that at $1,000. I, struggled with that piece of I want people to do the program and I don't want money to be a barrier. And even though I know it's worth more than $1,000, we have been advertising the Sweet Freedom Online program for $747. And we've had many people who've actually said, who have been in the program to say that it's absolutely worth doing it for that. And if you look at what we're giving you, we've got the 8-week live coaching program with the 8 live Zoom sessions. We've got the 30-day sugar-free challenge within that. You've got the private Facebook community, plus those 5 downloadable guides. You've got the 21-day ebook with all those recipes and meal plans, and the 7 Recipes for Life ebook series, the Return to Food 7-day challenge we've got, and those 8 bonus talks and interviews with leading health experts, plus the Return to Food 7-day challenge. We think it's absolutely an amazing value at that price. But what we're doing for the webinar today is we're actually giving you lifetime access to the program for $447. And I can assure you that we've had people who have done the program and come back to us 6 times, right? So they keep coming back because of the community being so powerful. So you can imagine if you have lifetime access to this, and that means that you have lifetime access to these live coaching sessions, that you can pay for this program by just going sugar-free for 1 month. What you'll spend in a month on sugar and sugar-related things for the average sugar addict, we're not talking about the hardcore sugar addict, you'll pay for it within a month. And so we would love to invite you to start your journey. For literally just the price of a coffee and a sweet for 1 month, you can achieve sweet freedom. And that's only $447. Now, to get you started, for the first 10 people, I'm actually offering a live coaching session. I'm giving you a fast start mindset coaching. So I'm going to get on the phone with you live, or we can get on a Zoom session. You can be face-to-face or just voice if you're a bit shy about being on camera. But I want to get you started and to really encourage you to get through the program, to give you the strategic steps to get engaged right away. So literally starting today, when you buy the program, you can actually schedule that session with me. And we're starting our next live coaching session on Monday. So you'll have access to the main materials for the program on Monday. But today, if you sign up right away, you can have access to the 7-day sugar-free challenge. You can have the 21-day ebook, so you can start to get, the idea of the recipes and go shopping with the shopping lists and maybe even make it to a farmer's market this weekend. But you're also going to get that live session with me that you can start to book right away. And I can actually be on the phone to to be your biggest cheerleader and your coach to help you achieve that sweet freedom and literally not waste another day of being under the grip, and the control of sugar. So we're going to start that bonus is available to the first 10 people. It's worth $250, and I've got another bonus. This is one of my favorite bonuses. For the first 10 people that sign up, we have got the zoodle maker. This is shipped right to your door. Now, the zoodle maker makes the best zucchini noodles ever, and one of the foods that people often find the most difficult to give up when they start to eat healthy is pasta. And so zucchini's in season right now, so it literally is the best time of the year to be making zoodles, let alone, getting off of sugar. Really, summer is my most favorite time to actually do the program because nature gives us such a bounty. Zucchini's in its season, and I'm giving the first 10 people who sign up a zoodle maker and access to the program right away. So what you need to do to sign up for the webinar is to go to sweetfreedomlife.com, and you can see the link here. Andy, are we putting the link in? It's already, if you just look below, he's got it organized right there. So you just need to click on to get onto the program right away. So I am looking forward to seeing you, and just to let you know that there's no risk in doing this. Remember, it's better to get started than to do nothing or just stay on the sweet freedom train. And so to take the risk away, we're giving you a 60 money back guarantee and lifetime access. Now, obviously, if after 60 days you're choosing not to do the program, we totally understand. We will give you a refund. Obviously, you won't have lifetime access, but if you stay with us, and we encourage you to just try it out, to just be part of it. Because even if you don't do the program perfectly this time around, because you have lifetime access, you can keep coming back to us until you've got it all handled. And some people, after one round of Sweet Freedom, they really have got it handled and they just dip into the group as they need it. But for others, it can take time, and we know that. And so we want to make sure that you have access to be able to do it. So if you're thinking you don't have enough time to do the program, a lot of people, this is one of the questions that comes up most, is, Sherry, what kind of time commitment does this take? And really, it's a how long is this piece of string question. But what we do know is that every single person who's had success within the program has found that the way we do it, the way we integrate the process and the strategies of how I've actually created this program mean that it's not overwhelming. I'm not going to get you to give up sugar on the first day of the program. So we get you ready to do it in increments and time periods that are not burdensome. And if you just give up like a portion of your social media time or television watching time, and you just direct that into Sweet Freedom throughout the week, you're going to find that time is absolutely not an issue. Now, if money is an issue for you right now, I want you to kind of look at this as an investment to what you're going to save throughout the year. And whether you have to, find a way to actually fund this, and it feels like a reach and it feels like a stretch, I want you to just ask yourself what sugar's costing you, what even 1 week with a cold costs you, what that poor memory recall, or your brain not working on full cylinders is costing you, in your business, in your work, just in your quality of life. That you will find the means when you find the why. Like, if you understand why sugar is so important to get out of your life, the means will come to you, and we promise you that it will be an investment that you will never regret. And particularly the people who have been in Sweet Freedom for a long time feel like it is literally one of the best investments that you will ever make, because you're not just ensuring that you're going to wake up better, feeling better tomorrow morning, and the next day and the next day, but you're ensuring not just a longer life, but a life with greater quality of life. So to me, that is priceless. And the other thing too that comes up for people is, the feeling of doing it alone. You don't have to do this alone, that you have community and you have people who genuinely care about you, not just me, but the community. You're going to find that people absolutely love and support and care for one another. So I just want to share some of the experiences that people have had around this. Romney, this message came to me just last week. We're starting the new program on July 1st, which is Monday, which is Canada Day here in Canada, and a public holiday. But it's an auspicious, wonderful time to actually start it as the beginning of what most people associate with summer. So Romney first did our program when it first came out. She found that it was incredibly helpful for her. And over a period of time, she kind of left the group and she fell into one of the traps of, seeing food and sweets at work and partaking of it. And what she has realized is she does need to come back to the program, because she says in this message she shared on Facebook that this is the one program that worked for me. And she thanks us for listening, because she knows in this group we are truly the people who care about you. And yeah. And so we also have Pam, who she really had massive success with the first program. And she had, although she's always, there in the group and she's chiming in by email, she's retired now and does amazing things, travel around the world and has a wonderful family and social life. So what she found is that Sweet Freedom is something that made a difference for her right away. And since doing the program, she has not had any kind of massive fall off the Sweet Freedom train. She says that she has a huge amount of respect for, she says, for you, and will always be grateful to your guidance, leading me to realize that I had sugar addiction. It's a real thing, and giving me the tools to get away with it. She said, I'm 18 months almost with no or greatly reduced sugar, and I feel awesome. I still want sugar, but I no longer need it. And she says it's a big difference. And Monica is actually a holistic nutritionist. And one of the things I love to do when I'm traveling to different cities, like when I got to meet Christina in Toronto, I got to meet Monica for the first time when I went out to the Okanagan for my brother's 50th birthday. And Monica says here, it was such an honor to meet you in person. I loved our chat, just like we were catching up after a few years. As discussed, going 100% off of sugar does not work for me, but having a bit of a treat here and there is doable in my life. However, being mindful about it and asking what, why, and with whom is always a question to ask. Is it serving my body? These are tidbits that resonated the most for me of your teachings, plus the fact that you ate ice cream for breakfast. And I loved it. It was a relief to me that you actually understood that desire. So I come about this from being an addict and not a perfectionist about it. So she resonated with that. She said, I love everything that I've learned from you in the Sweet Freedom community. He's always very supportive. And yes, I will be joining you on July 1st. Thank you for what you do. So this is part of the community. And people like Gina, who, when she first did the Sweet Freedom program, she avoided it for the first 2 times that it was on offer, because she was so afraid of, giving up sugar, which I can completely relate to. But she says, that since being on the program, when she did it, she felt amazing when she finally actually committed to it. And she said a year ago, even 3 months ago, this moment was not even on my radar as possible. And she'd been sitting on it for a few months. And when she said, I could not imagine myself being free from the hold sugar had on me. I felt hopeless and defeated, and I felt like such a failure. Once I started and really worked the program, I was unstoppable. So she said, within a week, I had more energy. I felt lighter. The weight seemed to, start to fall off immediately. And she went from a size 18 to 14 in less than a month. And that she's wearing clothes from before. But what I find really interesting is that, she said, I felt rested in the morning and ready for the day instead of sluggish, wishing for bedtime again before my eyes were even open. And this is where I really want you to know is that she says symptoms of plantar fasciitis in my feet and carpal tunnel in my wrist and sleep apnea have all but disappeared. Migraines that were occurring at least twice a month have been non-existent. She said, my skin feels fabulous, and my husband has noted on a couple occasions that I look younger. I do not miss the way sugar or the way I know it was making me feel. I do not miss sugar or the way it was making me feel. And she truly has found Sweet Freedom, and what an appropriate name it is for the program. So these are the things you can actually look forward to in a life that is sugar-free and you're experiencing true sweet freedom. So I just want to remind you that we have that bonus. or 2 bonuses, 3 bonus, 4 bonus. There's lots of wonderful things you can take advantage of. For signing up today, the first 10 people are going to get that quick start mindset coaching session with me. And you're going to get a zoodle maker delivered to your door. And remember, all of this for what it will cost you less than a month of indulging in sugar. You know, one of my illustrations, one of my favorite illustrations from Return to Food is this one where it says, become your own hero. Do the thing you fear you cannot do, but feel you were born to do. The thing you most admire in others, but in your own unique, amazing, and loving way. This is Sweet Freedom is about your own personal hero's journey. And the fact that you're even considering this, and if you signed up for it so far, I congratulate you, because it will make a massive difference in your life. And I want to, at this point, just say thank you for showing up this far. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share with me right now, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And more than happy to start that session with you today if you want to get started today. This illustration from Return to Food says, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it is enough. It's by Meister Eckhart. I just want to say I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you showing up to this session with me, for actually taking a stand for yourself. This is a radical act of self-love that most people don't do. There's a fear that we often have around giving up sugar. And when we actually conquer that fear, we do become our own hero. And we have a level of gratitude and joy that ends up in our life that is hard to imagine at this stage. So our expression for Sweet Freedom is real food, real life, and real joy. And we truly believe that this is open and possible to you. So by starting the Sweet Freedom Life online program, you have access to those bonuses, access to personal coaching session with me that I do not offer throughout the year. This is something that is exclusive to the first 10 people who are going to sign up with us today. And that Sweet Freedom 8-week online live coaching program starts Monday. And I would love to see you with us in that group that is totally dedicated to helping you live your absolute best life and feeling free from the hold that sugar has on you. Oh, great. So we have some questions now. So Andy, what question? What's our first question that we have?
Okay, this one's from Laurie, and it says, can you review bad versus good sugars and those that are hiding in our food, yet we have no idea how we associate sugar with sweets, but how they exist everywhere in different forms?
Okay, this is a great question, and it's an in-depth one. So the first thing is distinguishing good sugars from bad sugars. And the most easy way to do this is to understand that the sugars that exist in nature are good sugars. But here's the thing we need to understand about this is that most sugars in naturally occurring are very different to what we associate with being natural sugars today. So even something as simple as like blueberries and apples, years ago, they weren't as sweet as they are now. So as we've developed a sweet palate, growers have actually bumped up the sugar levels in the fruit that we're having. So that sugar in its natural state is our bodies can assimilate it because it has all these fibers and macro and micronutrients and vitamins and minerals. But once we start to process the sugar, so even taking it from fruit and turning it into juice, we lose a lot of the things that help our body actually cope with that amount of sugar in our body. So if we take the amount of sugar in an apple and eat it with the apple, it has a different effect on our body than if we take the sugar out of the apple and just have it on its own. So every step away from nature that sugar gets, the less desirable it is and easy for our body to assimilate. So that's really important. Now, most of the sugars that we're having in processed foods that are hidden, in crazy things, like they're actually adding refined sugar to dried fruit. To me, that's like deep frying fat, having blocks of lard that coat in breadcrumbs and then deep fry it. It's kind of insanity. So these are the sugars we want to be aware of, is the bumped up sugars in natural things and having too many natural sugars, because even if it's fruit, it can create an imbalance in our body. Now, with fruit, there's usually a way of actually counteracting that. or nature telling us, because we end up spending a lot of room in the smallest room in the house, a lot of time in the smallest room in the house. But uh, if we have refined sugars, that mechanism, it really messes with our body, and it's much harder for us to actually deal with. So refined sugars and sugars you can't make in nature, definitely not. Natural sugars, great in natural amounts that we would have in nature. And the more natural the food source of the sugar we can get, and the closer to the source, so in the whole source, and organic and biodynamic sources are going to be better for us. Great.
We've got a question from Renee, and she is asking, once I get even a tiny bit of sugar, carb, or fat, especially peanut butter, I lose all control and eat an enormous amount of food. Honestly, it feels far beyond my normal self-control, and it feels very biological, far more than what it is normal. Also, it takes me a long time to feel satisfied with eating. Somehow my brain doesn't get the feeling I've eaten enough in the normal 20 minutes. So I just keep shoveling food in. I would call it a binge.
So the question, what's the question, do you think?
It's when you eat sugar or fats, you kind of lose all control and quickly fall into a binge.
Yeah. So there's two things to address with this. Number one, that when we have anything that has kind of allergic response in our body, it can actually give us a strong compulsion to eat more of it. It's counterintuitive that why would something we're allergic to give us a strong addictive response, but it's proven that it does. So most of the fats that we're having and the sugars that we're having have been nutrient depleted, or they're bumped up with refined sugars. So most people don't realize that, Kraft peanut butter has tons of sugar in it. It has salt in it. So these are lethal recipes, ingredients. So if you look at the science of how they're actually creating foods with sugar, salt, and fat, in fact, there's a whole book written on it by a former food executive, processed food executive. He actually goes into or a journalist writing about how they have strategically and scientifically designed food to become addictive, and they call it the bliss point. And so many of these foods we actually think we're eating that are natural, like peanut butter, are actually highly processed. They'll put hydrogenated fats in it. They'll put refined sugars and refined salts in it. So what's happening with the body is we're getting something that we're maybe even allergic to, because peanuts, the way they're actually making peanuts and growing them now and processing them, have lots of toxic and allergens in them. So you combine that with the lethal recipe of refined sugars, oil, and salt, and sometimes chemicals, and including sometimes they put MSG in it. It literally is like putting paper onto the fire of the furnace of your body. Like if you want to have your body burning long and slow, you put logs on the fire. But if you want things to burn fast and quick, and you are always having to put fuel on the fire, you're putting paper. And a lot of these foods are processed like paper. And so you can never actually eat enough of them to satiate you. And that's why it's so important to that number 2 point about crushing your sugar cravings. It's more important what you don't eat than what you do eat. So we'll get you onto natural nut butters that have nothing but the nut butter in it. Natural fats that are nourishing, energizing, protective, and satiating. So that's kind of the difference as to why we'll have those cravings. Now, the other piece of that is the emotional piece. So if you don't nourish yourself, or even if you nourish yourself, but you don't deal with the hypernourishment piece, the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of our addiction, even if those foods are healthy, if we don't get them handled, we can still overeat of those foods, natural versions of them, and that will create an imbalance in the body. That's why at Sweet Freedom, we work on all levels, not just the food piece.
Interesting one from Carol here. So, hello, do you have a training program to teach students so that they can in turn instruct classes re sugar addiction? I am a health coach who has a focus on Ayurvedic nutrition. All clients have sugar addictions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
Oh, great. Thanks, Carol. So Carol's asking if she's an Ayurvedic health coach, and she says all her clients have sugar addiction. So do we teach people. Basically, I'll answer your question, Carol, is that we are looking to develop a team of Sweet Freedom coaches. So the first step in becoming a Sweet Freedom coach is to actually take the program. But I've been teaching people how to become return to food coaches for about 6 years now. And we're now taking that program and training people to become Sweet Freedom coaches. But the first stop is actually taking our program and going through it as a student. So yeah, we're on the process of working that out, and we'd love to have you join us as one of our Sweet Freedom coaches down the track.
And last question from Alison. She says, hello, Sherry and Andy. Hello, Alison. The to do it alone voice has been incredibly loud. Ironically, it's not nearly as loud when it comes to accountability.
Okay. So I'm thinking the question is more of a statement around doing it alone is loud voice for you, but the accountability piece, this is a great thing that you bring up, super appropriate, and it makes me want to include this. This is a great question because accountability is one of the things that's really important for us getting off of, and actually taking action. But it's also the biggest thing that keeps us away because we're afraid that once we have someone who makes us accountable, we actually have to change and do the things. And yes, that is one of the great things about being in groups is the accountability piece. But I want to assure you that one of the great things about Sweet Freedom and our online community and accountability is we're not into tough love, we're into love. So there's no falling down. There is no failure in this group. The only failure is never seeing you again and going back, hopping on the sugar train. You can fall off as many times as you like. We believe in more. I remember seeing a post in Facebook where it talked about an African tribe that when someone had done something wrong, instead of banishing them out of the group, they surround that person in love and they help build that person's self-esteem and they care for them. So our accountability is very much a loving approach and it's a non-judgmental approach. We don't even in the group allow you to say mean things about yourself, let alone other people. There's no chastising one another. This is an incredibly supportive group, and the accountability is something where you step into that space and you know that you're not going to be judged, but you're going to be encouraged to just move a step further. Just do one thing each day that will move you in the direction of Sweet Freedom. So, and it really comes back to that whole thing that getting started is way better than doing nothing, and definitely way better than just succumbing to, living on the train that goes to Sugar City. Great. Okay. Those are the questions that we have for now. I want to thank you guys for asking those questions. Number one, it's a lovely thing to be able to answer, and also acknowledging Andy as part of our Sweet Freedom team. He's indispensable for what we do, and I'm super grateful to him. And I'm just going to wrap up by saying, be sure to log on. Be sure to be one of those first 10 people. I would love to start off with a session with you right away to get going. And to start your Sweet Freedom journey. So if you haven't already, go below and click the link, get started. If you have any questions, you're most welcome to ask me, Sherry at sweetfreedom.ca. You'll find me there. So Sherry, SHERRY at sweetfreedom.ca. If you have any questions regarding the program, if you'd like to get started right away, I am here to serve and help you. And I look forward to welcoming you into our Sweet Freedom live coaching program on Monday. Thank you so much for staying with us this far. I just want to send you a big virtual hug and lots of love from myself and the Sweet Freedom team. Take care and have a fabulous day.